When I was a journalist, I saw how even the smallest shift in messaging could completely change the impact of a story. It wasn't about forcing a narrative. It was about finding what people already cared about and reflecting that back to them. Now, it sounds obvious, but how many campaigns actually do that? This week, I've picked a few examples that show how aligning with your audience's mindset can lead to powerful results in PR-led marketing, from crafting the right hook to addressing the concerns that they're not saying out loud, but they're feeling. I also wanted to tell you about something else that I've launched now for the Public Relations Podcast, and that is the Public Relations Podcast Premium, which I have unveiled, so you can actually join it now, but I guess people are going to be picking up on this in the new year. But it's what I'm calling a hack a week. And each week, what I'm doing is I'm breaking down a specific strategy or technique that I'm seeing work. I'm showing how you can apply that in your own campaign in a step-by-step way. And the idea for the Public Relations Podcast Premium really came from you. You know, many of you were asking for more detailed guidance on applying the ideas, and I only have so much time in the day to do these podcasts and newsletters. So that's what Premium is all about. It's a natural sort of next step for anyone who wants to go deeper into all this stuff without needing to figure it out alone. Because what I do is I come up with this hack, which is basically a guide. It's got like an audio introduction, and it leads through everything and step-by-step process into how to apply this. And it's very practical. It's designed to be something that you can apply to your campaigns today. I'll tell you a little bit later during the podcast about how it actually works. But one other thing I did want to say is as we head into Christmas, and it's just another one of these festive periods that we have around the world, and I know people are listening around the world and you have different festivals, I did just want to say thank you for being part of this community. You know, whatever your faith is at this time of year, you know, community is so important, and I hope you have a wonderful time with your friends and family, whatever you're up to. There won't be a newsletter or podcast next week because I'm going to be taking a short break, but we will be back in the new year with more insights to help you get your campaigns truly connecting with people. So for now, let's get started with this week's 2 podcasts, although I suspect you'll probably be listening to them once you come back in the new year, but whatever. You get the point. Let's start off with a quick tip. If you can't find the right influencer who says what you need to say inside your topic area, think outside the niche. Here's Mike Myers' tip from Green Lane Communications in North Carolina that he shared on the show. He said, instead of focusing on influencers specific to your industry, target those aligned with your audience's broader interests, like fitness or parenting. Anything else where your audience is active, allowing you to reach them, especially harder to reach demographics. Right, next section, stories I've spotted that offer real insight into the PR-led approach. This morning I heard a news story referencing a report by an organisation called Market Forces, and it's a lobby group aiming to hold banks and financial institutions accountable for failing to meet environmental promises. And this radio news report began with the words, a report from Market Forces, immediately giving the impression of authority. You know, however, a report from any organisation with a clear agenda can't ever be independent or objective. You know, regardless of whether you agree with them or not, it can't be. And yet, these kinds of reports get coverage all the time. What's interesting is how journalists, influencers, and the public latch onto a report like this simply because they're framed as authoritative. And of course, you can do the same. Now, producing one isn't difficult. It's often about structuring existing information into a more formal format with an introduction, data points, and a conclusion. And of course, AI tools can certainly help you draft those if you've given the right data to the AI. So, for example, let's say you take a retail chain struggling with clothing sales during a recession, okay? Which sadly looks like we might be heading towards. They could use sales data or surveys to create a report showing that even during tough times, people still buy the things they want over the things they actually need in their shopping habits. And this is something that I've actually seen in the past as a journalist. I remember doing some work on this. Such a report will highlight this sort of interesting insight. It positions the retailer as a trusted authority. And of course, you can then name drop the products that you're trying to market or sell at that moment as items that people are already buying. Now, of course, if you have any kind of ethical concerns with this, remember, this is what everyone is doing, whether it's organizations, businesses, or campaign groups. Campaign groups in particular are doing this often, releasing reports which are heavily slanted to their point of view. So simply giving some more research based on real data, it could well hold more credibility. Reports, they add weight to your narrative. So just as Market Forces clearly found with their latest campaign and the interviews they secured off the back of it, people tend to think only politics and campaign groups can do this, but businesses can and do it too. So if you haven't signed up, by the way, to the physical newsletter, then, of course, the link to Market Forces and that story you can find in the physical newsletter if you go to the publicrelationspodcast.com and click on the newsletter link there. The other quick story I thought I would mention is one from Virgin Media. Now, Virgin Media recently launched a campaign featuring an AI granny who intimidates phone scammers. I'm not kidding. The video that they released shows the computer-generated granny, in quotes, replying to scammers and keeping them occupied, cleverly sort of tapping into the public's annoyance with spam calls and the kind of rising trend of scam betas on platforms like YouTube, so where they actually take on the scammers and give them a hard time. Now, it's unclear if this is kind of a long-term campaign or if it's just a stunt, but it immediately resonates with audiences because it directly addresses this widespread frustration that we all have with spammers. I thought the choice of a granny was brilliant. It's relatable, it generates instant sympathy, and it feels less aggressive. It's more warming to anyone, even if you don't understand the whole idea of spam betas, than, say, a 20-year-old YouTube star targeting call centers. I think the humour in the AI interactions also adds charm to it, while subtly sort of reinforcing Virgin Media's message that they're tackling spam callers using their networks. Now, of course, Virgin Media is ultimately trying to market their services, but the campaign is showing the power of a PR-led approach in that it's not about directly selling a product. It's about showing alignment with their audience's concerns. The campaign effectively says, we get it. Spam calls are annoying, and we're on your side. So then the question, of course, is how can you replicate that on a budget? For example, well, a thing that came to my mind when I was recording this podcast was I thought about a sat-nav company or an in-car entertainment brand and what kind of universal frustrations users of those products have. And I thought, well, the most obvious one is roadworks. Okay, we've all done this. We've all driven up to some roadworks when we're trying to get somewhere quickly and the freeway or the motorway or whatever you call it in your country is blocked. So, on a really simple level, I'm sure you can come up with better ideas than this, but on a really simple level, you could film a colleague at the sat-nav firm, let's say you're working at the sat-nav firm, driving up on the freeway to the roadworks and getting really annoyed and frustrated. And then you take that video back to your office and you load that video feed and you film it on your mobile phone. You load it into a free video editor like DaVinci Resolve, or maybe you want to use Descript or something like that. And then you record another track underneath that with another colleague in your office, giving dialogue that sounds like a sat-nav. So, turn left in the next 100 yards. Turn right at the next junction. But then you add in some sort of Zen-like messages instead, which says things like, turn left at the next junction, but don't worry, Bill. Just take some deep breaths, because this delay is only temporary. You'll be there soon. Or, don't worry, John. I get it. You're really annoyed, but you will get there. Listen, it's 100 yards away. Or whatever it is you want to do. Or, you could even say something like, in 100 yards, there will be a really annoying set of roadworks, which is going to make you 15 minutes late, and you're probably not going to get to that dinner tonight, and your partner is going to scream at you. But don't worry, John, because we're with you. Or something like that. You get the point. And so you can do that. That's just off the top of my head, but you get the point. The success here lies in relatability and humour, making people feel understood, like you get it. Now, Virgin Media, as I know personally, having been one of their customers, it has some of the worst customer service in the world. They are absolutely reprehensible, and I'm really happy to say that. But their marketing team really gets it, and I do love this sort of innovative approach. Once again, you can find a link to that particular campaign, the AI Granny one, in the physical, I say the physical newsletter, the electronic newsletter, the one which has got words in it, the ones that you have to write. Right, okay, coming up on Thursday, I'm going to have a focus topic for this week where I'm going to talk about the importance of finding the right hook for the start of a story in a campaign. How you actually grab people in right at the beginning. Also, it's probably worth me mentioning that with the Public Relations Podcast Premium, how it works is that when you sign up, you start receiving one hack a week. And it's delivered like a sort of drip-fed course. And each hack will come with an audio guide to set the scene. There's a deep dive into the principles behind the strategy. There's an ethical lens to consider. A practical, then step-by-step framework you can use right away to apply to your campaigns. And the goal is to give you something that you can act on immediately. So far, I've covered ideas like creating trends and starting campaigns when your audience is, and I've got plenty more lined up. I've got so many different aspects that I hope you're going to find really useful. It's a way to sort of take the insights from the podcast to the next level and give you something actionable every single week. If that sounds useful, I will include all the links in the newsletter, and also you can find it now if you click on the members link on the website. It's in the main menu at the top. Right, I think that's actually going to be enough for today. As I say, I suspect if you are celebrating Christmas, then you're probably not going to be around this week, so I hope you pick up on this podcast when you get back. For the moment, I will speak to you in 2 days' time, and then I'll talk about getting your audience really engaged right from the start. And then also, of course, this week's comms conundrum. What are you going to do in this particular situation? It's quite an interesting one. I quite like it.